I'll introduce you to Alex Hooper-Hodson, who's on the other line here. Alex, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
So you operate at a different end of the business to Susie, obviously.
Well, I do a sort of teenage agony uncle style of things. So I write for the Glasgow Daily Record. I used to work for Sugar magazine back in sort of the mid-2000s, dealing with teen problems there on a monthly basis.
And how did you get started?
Well, I come from a kind of a strange background, an interesting background. My father was probably one of the first agony uncles in existence. He used to be on Going Live and Saturday Superstore in the sort of 1980s with Philip Schofield and Sarah Green. His name's Hooper-Hodson. And he's quite well known in the field, and he used to do Trisha and various other things in the News of the World for many years. And my mother is the author Anne Hooper, who writes sex books, and who's also done many different sort of counselling and problem page type jobs over the years. So I kind of came from a family background where it was very normal to do these things. And then I got started because I went and studied counselling when I was in my 20s and started running youth counselling groups. And as such, Sugar approached me back about 12 years ago and asked me to have a go at the job. And ever since then, I've been doing it and progressed to the point where I've written sort of 3 books now for teen puberty sort of problems. And it's become my speciality, yeah.
Because we're constantly told, Alex, aren't we, that young men don't like to talk about their problems?
I mean, that's frankly not true. It is true that I think in general I would get a majority of letters from girls, and less guys, I think, feel they can write in. But the ones who do write in are very honest and open and need help too. I mean, you know, they are more than happy to sort of to talk about it, particularly with an agony uncle as well, or an agony aunt. I think, you know, we do sort of provide a way to have these conversations that maybe are quite difficult to traditionally have with maybe sort of family or friends or loved ones. You know, we are strangers at the same time. We're sort of an ear you can turn to and talk to. But, you know, as was mentioned before, it is still entertainment, and you do have to make the column interesting and good for the readers too.
So is it possible to say, you know, which is the problem that crops up time and time again with young men?
Okay, so obviously bear in mind my age group is sort of 12 to 19-year-olds, so I don't deal with adults so much these days. But I would say with young men, it is generally I'm falling in love with my friend's girlfriend. I mean, all variations on that. And that goes for young men and young women. I mean, that's very common with the relationship problems to be kind of wants to do with fidelity and wants to do with being able to, you know, say no, I think, because at that age it is quite difficult to when you have a temptation to do something, to go ahead and say no. And you often do need to sort of have someone help you think it through. So I do get that quite often, yes.
And is there a type of person that phones in, or rather writes in?
No, not at all. There's definitely not a type. No, I mean, it takes all sorts, absolutely across the board. And I mean, I get letters from all sorts of age groups. I get letters from guys in their 70s sometimes. I can't print them because it's not appropriate for the column, but you get all sorts of people writing to you, and you get all sorts of ranges of problems. And one of the things I found, actually, after doing the job for about, 11 years now, is that you can start to categorize problems. Although you get many thousands of different letters, they do start to have broad trends. And I started to think about this a few years ago and actually managed to break it down to about 52 key problems that it seems most teens have. And I went and wrote a couple of books on that, which are 2 of my last 2 books, which are 52 teen problems every girl has and every boy has, and they're published by Hachette. And the basis for that is that these are effectively kind of the model problems that I've been sent, so picking one from each of these groups, and they illustrate really these kind of common themes that are going on in young people's lives. But also, one of the other things I should say really is that social media has very much changed the landscape of teen problem pages in the time I've been doing it. Because when I began, we barely had, I think MySpace didn't come out until 2005, so 2004 there was nothing like it. Nowadays, most teen problems and teen relationships are massively influenced by things like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and you know, they've changed the landscape of the problem page.
Yeah, so would you like to be 15 again?
I would definitely like to be 15 again, but with maybe some of the wisdom I've acquired over the years. Yeah.
Now, I know you deal mainly with teens. Do you mind if I read a problem to you?
Yeah, of course.
Which we found in one of the papers today, but I suspect this is probably a common problem. And it says, It's taken me quite a while to pluck up the courage to write to you because I fear that you'll think I'm foolish. Mm-hmm. I'm in the throes of a second affair with a married man after a gap of 17 years. Mm-hmm. I quite simply adore this man, and he says he feels the same about me. But trying to get him to leave his wife of 30 years is difficult. Mm-hmm. He says his reasons for leaving are financial, and yes, they've got a lovely home as well. Mm-hmm. I do believe what he tells me, and he appears to have a very unhappy married life. Mm-hmm. He is 63. His wife is 61. I am 53.
Sure.
I cannot carry on without him, but equally cannot carry on like this. So what do you suggest?
It's very difficult, isn't it? I mean, with relationships in these kind of situations, you do have to look at kind of happiness and weigh up how happy you are. And obviously there are financial considerations, particularly when you're at that particular stage of life. But I do think a dishonest relationship is a silly thing to spend the rest of your life in, and it can be very destructive to break up with someone. It can be very painful, and often the reasons why people are having affairs aren't necessarily that they want to have the affair itself. It's more that they are incredibly unhappy, and this is causing almost behaviour where they're acting out. So in that situation, I think you really have to weigh it up. You do have to look at the strengths of the marriage. Can you fix the marriage? Can you go and get counselling? Is there a way out of this? I would advise against having affairs to anyone. I think that the current young generation, particularly more so than previous generations for the last 30 years, I have more sort of fidelity to them. So something I was discussing with my dad, who also works in the field, the other day, and he said, our generation, people didn't really have so much fidelity. It was much more post-60s kind of, you'd go out, you could have more affairs. It wasn't seen as so bad, and he actually thought that people of sort of the teenage and then their 20s these days are actually a bit more kind of concerned with sticking with one partner, and it's kind of come full circle again. And I would say that in the case of this problem, it definitely the right thing to do is sit down on your own, figure out what do I want out of my life at the moment. I might be 63.
Well, she wants him. She says she cannot carry on without him.
Then she needs to talk to him, and even if, pardon me. Even if he, isn't in a position to reciprocate, she needs to start wondering why she's acting up in her own marriage. Maybe she needs to be alone and have some time to herself, and then maybe meet someone else.
She wants him.
But
she wants him. She needs him. She can't carry on without him.
Well, she needs to start thinking about what's provoking these thoughts, because she's obviously not happy, and I think he is a symptom of that. If it wasn't him, it would be someone else. It's not so specific. It can feel very specific to being about a particular person, but I think when someone has itchy feet, and you have the 7-year itch, and it doesn't always happen to be 7 years, but people do sort of have these sort of stages, these periods where they're very into people, and then that breaks down, and you do need to start reassessing things every so often, and you've got to make yourself happy. You only get one life, and if she's being unfaithful and not happy, she's not going to make her current partner happy, so she does need to think it through very specifically. But I wouldn't anchor all your happiness on this other man leaving his wife, because then you're going to potentially cause yourself a lot of upset. There's no way to guarantee it. So
okay, Alex, good to talk to you. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much. Nice to talk to you too.
Alex Hooper-Hodson, who's a teenage agony uncle. That last problem I've just read out, you might have been in that situation yourself. You might have been in a relationship, having an affair with somebody who is married, and of course, you get in really deep, don't you? And you feel as though you cannot carry on without that person. That person says they're going to leave, and of course they never do. And how do you deal with those very deep feelings? 01642 225511. Here's Dan with the travel update.
Looking pretty good across the northeast this morning. Not seeing any accidents to report. No real congestion hanging around from rush hour. All the main A roads and the A1